He raised the hammer in the middle of town, and every man watching knew he was about to lose everything, or uncover something no one dared speak aloud. The first strike rang out sharp against the iron, louder than it should have been, like it cracked the air itself. A child started crying somewhere behind a wagon. The chain jerked, rust falling in flakes onto the dirt. No one moved. Not the sheriff. Not the men on the porch. The woman inside the cage didn't beg. She just held the bars, watching him like she already knew the cost. The second strike came harder, and that's when someone in the crowd finally whispered his name. "Tell me if you would have stepped in or walked away." The road into Grayson Ford ran long and red, cutting through dry hollow pass like a scar that never quite healed. Dust hung low in the heat, drifting slow as breath. By noon, the sun sat heavy overhead, pressing everything flat. Sound, shadow, even the will to speak. That was where they put her. The cage stood just off the road, iron bars bolted into a rough wooden frame, low enough that a person could not stand straight inside it. Rust clung to every joint. The hinges creaked when the wind shifted, though the door had not opened since morning. Ava Brooks held the bars with both hands. She pulled them once, testing them again, though she already knew they would not give. The metal burned against her palms. She let go, then reached back anyway, fingers curling tight, as if the pain could keep her steady. Above her, nailed crooked to a beam, a wooden board swayed. Thief. The letters had been painted in a hurry, one stroke thicker than the next. The paint had already begun to crack under the sun. A wagon came first. 2 mules, heads low, pulling a bed stacked with feed sacks. The driver slowed when he saw the cage. His hands tightened on the reins. For a moment, it looked like he might stop. The wheels ground softer against the gravel. Inside the wagon, a woman lifted her hand to her mouth. Her eyes lingered on Ava's face, on the split in her lower lip. The dust caked along her cheek. Then the driver glanced toward town. Not far off, the sheriff's office sat with its door open, the shadow inside deep and cool. A man leaned in that doorway, hat pulled low. The reins snapped. The wagon rolled on. Ava watched it go until it blurred into the heat. She swallowed once. Her throat moved, dry. No sound came out at first. Then, just under her breath, as if the words might break if spoken too loud, "I earned my wages." The wind carried it nowhere. Another wagon passed. Then a rider. Then a pair of boys walking barefoot along the edge of the road. Each one slowed. Each one looked. Each one moved on. No one spat. No one laughed. That made it worse. The silence wasn't empty. It was full. Full of things unsaid. Full of people choosing not to say them. From down the road, a figure approached, slow and careful. Old Martha Bell, wrapped in a faded shawl despite the heat. Her steps were uneven, but she kept coming. In her hands, she carried a tin cup, the water inside trembling with each step. She stopped just outside the reach of the cage. For a moment, she didn't look up, her eyes fixed on the ground, on the dust that had already begun to settle over Ava's shoes. Then she lifted the cup. "Drink quick, child," she whispered. Ava moved before the words finished. She reached through the bars, fingers shaking, not from fear, but from the long stretch of heat and thirst. The cup came close enough that she could see her own reflection in the water. Warped, unsteady. Then a boot struck it. The tin cup flew from Martha's hands, hit the dirt, and rolled. The water vanished into the ground before it could soak in. Deputy Cole Hatcher stood there, one hand resting easy on his belt, the other still raised from the kick. "You know better," he said, voice low, almost bored. Martha didn't answer. Her hands stayed where they were, empty now, fingers curled like they still held something. "She'll die," she said after a moment. The words barely carried. Hatcher shrugged. "That ain't your concern." He tilted his head towards a town. "Unless you'd like to lose that cottage of yours by morning." Martha's shoulders sank. Not sudden, not sharp, just slow, like something giving way inside her. She turned her face toward Ava. Her eyes shone, not with tears yet, but close. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Ava held her gaze. She didn't nod right away. Her hand rested against the bar, palm still red from the heat. Then quiet, steady. "Don't lose your home for me." Martha covered her mouth and turned. She walked back the way she came, steps smaller now. Hatcher watched her go. Then he looked at Ava. "You should have kept your hands clean," he said. Ava didn't answer. He lingered a moment longer, then stepped away, boots crunching over gravel, heading back toward the shade. The road fell quiet again. Not empty, never empty. From the edge of town, two men stood talking low. One shook his head. The other looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. A door shut somewhere. Another followed. A curtain lifted in a window, then dropped. Ava leaned her shoulder against the iron. The heat pressed through the fabric of her dress. Her breath came slow, measured, like she was counting something no one else could see. She closed her eyes for a moment, not to rest, just to hold on. Far down the road, beyond the bend where Dry Hollow curved toward the hills, a shape moved against the dust. A horse. At first, it was nothing more than a darker line in the distance. Then it grew, steady, unhurried. The rider sat straight, hat low, letting the horse pick its way along the rutted path. The animal slowed as it neared the pass. Not at once, not sudden, just enough. Ava opened her eyes. She didn't call out. She didn't lift her hand. She only watched. The horse came to a stop a ways off, just beyond the stretch where most folks kept their distance. The rider remained in the saddle, looking toward the cage, toward the sign, toward the road that kept moving without her. The wind shifted. Dust rose, then settled again. No one in town stepped forward. No one spoke. And still, the horse did not move on. The rider sat quiet in the saddle, one hand resting loose on the reins. Dust clung to his coat, the kind that never quite brushed off. He looked at the cage, then at the sign above it, then back at the woman inside. He did not look away. Ava met his eyes, not pleading, not hard, just steady. The wind shifted again, carrying the faint smell of hay and iron. "You don't have to stop," she said. Her voice was thin, worn down by heat, but it held. It didn't reach for him. It let him go before he chose to stay. The man's jaw tightened just a little. Not anger, something quieter. He swung down from the saddle. Boots hit the ground with a soft thud. The horse snorted once, shifting its weight, as if unsure of the decision being made. A few heads turned from the edge of town. A door opened an inch. Someone stepped out onto a porch, then stopped. The man walked toward the cage, slow, measured, like he had all the time in the world. He stopped a few feet from the bars, close enough to see the cracks in her lips, the dust on her skin, the way her hands hovered near the iron without touching it now. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ava Brooks." He nodded once as if filing it somewhere that mattered. He glanced up at the sign, then back at her. "That ain't it," he said. No one laughed. From the sheriff's office, a chair scraped. Sheriff Grant Holloway stepped into the doorway, hand resting near his belt, eyes narrowed beneath his hat brim. "Mercer," he called out. "You ride on." The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned slightly, reached to the side of his saddle, and pulled free a hammer. The handle was worn smooth from use, the head darkened with age. The sound of metal against leather carried farther than it should have. A murmur moved through the edge of town. "Don't do it," someone whispered, not loud enough to be heard by anyone but themselves. Deputy Cole Hatcher stepped forward, quicker now. "You leave that cage alone," he said, voice sharp. "That girl's under lawful hold." Luke Mercer didn't look at him. He stepped up to the lock. The iron ring hung thick and rusted, chained tight around the door. It had held through sun and storm, through men stronger than it looked. Luke lifted the hammer. For a moment, nothing moved. Then he brought it down. The strike rang out across dry, hollow pass. Clean, hard, like something breaking loose inside the air itself. Ava flinched at the sound, not from fear, but from how loud it was after so much silence. Luke struck again. The chain jerked. Rust flaked loose. "Mercer!" Hatcher shouted. "You break that, you answer for it. You hear me? Whitaker'll have your land, your cattle, every board on your place, gone." Luke didn't stop. A third strike. Louder. The horse behind him shifted, stamping once. A child started crying somewhere behind a porch door, quickly hushed. Sheriff Holloway took a step forward, then another. Then he stopped again, watching, measuring something that wasn't written down anywhere. "You make your choice here," Hatcher said, breath tight now. "Ain't no taking it back." Luke brought the hammer down one last time. The lock split. Not clean, not neat, but enough. The chain slipped loose and hit the wood with a dull, final sound. No one moved. Luke reached out and pulled the cage door open. It groaned on its hinges, a long, tired sound, like it had been waiting for someone to ask it to. Ava stared at the opening. For a second, she didn't move. Then she placed one hand on the frame, careful this time, testing the space as if it might close again if she rushed it. She stepped forward. Her legs gave under her weight. Luke caught her before she hit the ground. She was lighter than he expected. Not fragile, just worn thin. He didn't look back at the town, didn't look at Hatcher, didn't look at the sheriff. He just steadied her. "Come on," he said. Simple. Like it had already been decided. Ava leaned into him just enough to stand. Her breath came uneven, but she found her footing for a step. Then another. Luke guided her to the horse. The animal lowered its head slightly as they approached, ears flicking back and forth. He helped her up first. Slow. Careful. One hand firm at her elbow, the other bracing her weight. She didn't argue. Didn't thank him either. She just held on to the saddle horn, fingers tight, as if the ground might tilt if she let go. Luke mounted behind her. For a moment, they sat there, the whole town in front of them, the cage behind. Sheriff Holloway shifted his stance. His hand hovered near his gun, then dropped. Hatcher took a step forward, then stopped when no one else followed. Dust lifted as Luke turned the horse. He rode past the edge of town without a word. No one stepped in his way. No one called him back. They all watched. The cage door swung once in the wind, then again. Empty now. And for the first time that day, the silence felt different. The road out of Grayson Ford bent west, narrowing as it climbed into low hills where scrub brush clung to dry earth. The town fell behind them quick. The noise of wheels and voices faded until there was nothing left but the steady rhythm of hooves and the soft creak of leather. Ava sat stiff in the saddle, one hand wrapped tight around the horn. The other rested against the horse's neck, fingers barely moving. She didn't turn to look back. Luke kept the reins loose. He didn't rush the horse, didn't ask questions. Every so often, he shifted just enough to keep her steady when the ground dipped or rose. The sun lowered by the time they reached Stone Creek. The ranch sat quiet in a shallow valley, a line of fence leaning where posts had loosened over time. The barn door hung half open. One hinge creaked when the wind pushed through. Beyond it, a stretch of dry grass led to a small house set low against the slope. Luke brought the horse to a stop near the porch. "Easy," he said, more to the horse than to her. He climbed down first, then reached up. Ava hesitated a second before letting him guide her down. Her boots touched dirt, but her knees bent with it. He steadied her, then let go. No words. Inside, the house smelled faintly of wood smoke and something older. Closed-up air. A table stood near the window, a tin cup turned upside down beside it. A quilt lay folded across the back of a chair, one corner torn loose. Luke moved through the room like he knew every inch without looking. He set a kettle on the stove, poured water from a jug, and struck a match. The flame caught slow, then settled. Ava stood just inside the doorway, not stepping farther in yet. He poured water into a cup and held it out. "Slow," he said. She took it with both hands. The metal was cool. She drank, stopped, then drank again. A little ran down her chin. She wiped it with the back of her hand, not looking up. Luke didn't comment. He set a small bowl on the table, filled it with broth from a pot that looked like it had been used 100 times before. He pushed it toward her, then stepped back, giving her space. She sat. The chair creaked under her weight. She held the spoon for a moment before using it, as if remembering how. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the walls, slipping through cracks in the frame. Later, when the light shifted and shadows stretched longer across the floor, Ava moved from the table. She walked slow, one hand grazing the wall for balance. She reached the window and paused. The shutters were closed tight, held by a simple latch. She lifted it. The wood stuck at first, then gave. Light poured in. Not bright, just enough to push back the dim. Dust drifted in the air, turning gold in the beam. Luke watched from where he stood by the stove. He didn't say anything. Didn't stop her. She opened the second shutter, then the third. By the time she stepped back, the room looked different. Same walls, same table, but not as closed in. That night, Luke spread a blanket across the spare bed in the small room off the main space. He set a clean shirt folded at the foot, then stepped out without knocking. Ava sat on the edge of the bed for a long time before lying down. The next morning came quiet. Luke was already outside when she woke. The sound of a bucket scraping against the well carried through the open window. She sat up slow. Her body ached, but not the same way it had before. Not sharp. Just there. The shirt he'd left was still folded. She changed into it, the fabric loose but clean. When she stepped into the main room, the table held a tin plate, a piece of bread, and a cup of coffee gone just warm. Luke came in a minute later, setting down a coil of rope. He glanced at her, then at the open windows. Something shifted in his face. Not a smile. Just less weight. "My wife," he said, nodding toward the quilt draped over the chair. Ava followed his gaze. The stitching was neat where it held, careful where it had been done. The torn edge hung loose. She stepped closer, ran her fingers along the seam, then pulled a needle and thread from a small tin near the stove. She didn't ask, just sat and began to mend it. Luke watched for a moment, then turned away, picking up the bucket again as if he had something to do outside. The day passed in small movements. Ava swept the floor, slow at first, then steadier. She rinsed the tin cups at the basin, set them back upright. She opened the back door for a while, letting air move through the house, then closed it again before the wind picked up too much. By evening, the place didn't feel abandoned anymore. Not full, not yet, but not empty either. When the light began to fade, Ava reached into the pocket of the dress she had worn the day before. The fabric was stiff with dust, torn near the seam. Her fingers found something caught there. She pulled it free. A strip of cloth, dark gray, rough weave, the edges frayed where it had been torn. She turned it in her hand. A faint smell clung to it. Oil. Not cooking oil, heavier, like the kind used on machinery. Luke stepped in from outside, setting down a lantern. He saw the cloth in her hand. "What is it?" he asked. Ava looked at it a moment longer. "Not mine," she said. She placed it on the table between them. The lantern light flickered across it, catching the sheen of oil along one edge. Luke didn't touch it. Not yet. He just looked. Ava's eyes lifted from the cloth to the open window. Beyond it, the last light of day stretched thin across the hills. "They locked me out there in daylight," she said. Her voice didn't break. It held steady, like something set in place. She stopped for a second, drew a breath. "I'll walk back the same way." Luke didn't answer, but he didn't look away either. The lantern burned low between them. The strip of cloth sat on the table, quiet as a secret that had waited too long. Outside, the wind moved through the fence line, rattling a loose post. Somewhere near the barn, a hinge tapped slow and steady. Luke reached for the cloth at last. He didn't pick it up right away, just ran his thumb along the edge of the table, then lifted it between two fingers. He brought it closer, turning at once. "Machine oil," he said. Ava nodded. "Not from a kitchen, not from a saddle either." Luke set it back down. "There's only one place in Grayson Ford smells like that," he said. "Whitaker's supply shed, where they keep the gear. Pay chests, too." Ava watched the cloth, not him. "They said I took coins," she said. Luke leaned back a little, arms resting loose at his sides. "Coins don't carry oil," he said. Silence settled again. Not heavy this time. Just there. By morning, the air had cooled. A thin line of light cut across the hills when Ava stepped out onto the porch. The ground still held the night's chill. Luke was already saddling the horses. "I'll go," he said without looking up. "You stay here." Ava stood still a moment. The boards beneath her feet creaked when she shifted her weight. "No," she said. Luke paused, hand resting on the strap. He glanced over his shoulder. "They'll come after you," he said. "They already did." He held her gaze a second longer, then nodded once. They rode back toward town together. The road looked the same. Red dust, dry brush, but something in it had changed. Or maybe it was just the way they were riding it now. They didn't go straight to the square. First stop was a small cottage near the edge of town. The fence leaned worse than Luke's. A line of laundry hung stiff in the breeze. Martha Bell opened the door before they knocked. She froze when she saw Ava. For a second, her hand gripped the doorframe like she needed it to stay standing. "You're," she started, then stopped. Ava stepped closer, not crossing the threshold. "You saw something," she said. Martha's eyes flicked past her, toward the road, toward the town. "I shouldn't—" "You already did," Ava said, quiet. Martha swallowed. Her shoulders drew in, then loosened again. "I saw a man," she said finally. "Late, after dark. Came out the back of Whitaker's shed with a sack. Heavy. He looked around like he didn't want to be seen." "Who?" Luke asked. Martha shook her head. "Didn't see his face, just the way he moved. Fast. Careful. Ava nodded. That's enough, she said. They left her there, standing in the doorway, watching them go. Next was Noah Pike's shop. The smell hit before they stepped inside. Leather, glue, and oil. Noah stood behind a workbench, a half-finished saddle in his hands. He didn't look surprised to see them, just uneasy. Luke set the cloth on the bench. Noah stared at it. You've seen that, Luke said. Noah wiped his hands on a rag that was already stained through. Could be from anywhere, he said. Ava didn't move closer, didn't press. She just stood where she was. Noah's eyes shifted from the cloth to her face, then away again. I fixed a strap, he said after a while. For Whitaker. Night before they said the money went missing. Strap was cut, clean, like it got caught on something sharp. Oil on it? Luke asked. Noah nodded once. Ava picked up the cloth. Thank you, she said. Noah didn't answer. Outside, the sun had climbed higher. The town felt tighter now, like word had already begun to spread. They turned toward the supply store last. Clara Jennings stood behind the counter, a ledger open in front of her. She didn't look up when they entered. I can't help you, she said before either of them spoke. Ava stepped to the counter, set the cloth down beside the book. Clara's eyes flicked to it, then to Ava, then back to the ledger. They told me you took wages, Clara said. I didn't. Clara's fingers rested on the page. The ink there was dark, fresh in places, smudged in others. They've been changing numbers, she said, voice low. Rounding down, writing over. It don't show unless you know where to look. Luke leaned in slightly. Show us. Clara hesitated, then turned the book. Columns of figures, some neat, some scratched and written again. That ain't right, Luke said. Clara closed the ledger halfway. If I say that out loud, she said, I lose more than this job. Ava picked up the cloth again, folded it once. We're not asking you to speak now, she said. Clara looked at her then, really looked. When? She asked. Ava met her eyes. In front of everyone. Clara didn't answer, but she didn't turn them away either. They rode back out toward Stone Creek as the light began to dip again. Halfway there, a rider passed them going the other direction. Then another. By the time they reached the ranch, the wind had shifted. That night, it came. Hooves first, then voices. Luke stepped out into the yard with his shotgun, the lantern behind him casting long shadows across the ground. 4 men sat on horses just beyond the fence. One struck a match, holding it near a stack of dry hay. Whitaker says you bring her back, the man called, or you lose more than cattle. Luke didn't raise the gun, not yet. Ava stepped out onto the porch, barefoot. She walked down the steps and stopped beside him. Not behind. Beside. The match burned low between the man's fingers. If he wants me back in chains, Ava said, her voice carrying farther than it had before, let him ask for it in front of everyone. The flame flickered. The man watched her. Then Luke. Then the house behind them. He shook the match out. Your choice, he said. They turned their horses and rode off into the dark. Luke lowered the gun slowly. Ava's hands trembled once, then stilled. He didn't say anything. She didn't either. But neither of them stepped away. The night passed slow after that. The wind settled sometime before dawn, leaving the ranch quiet in a way that felt earned. Luke stayed out a while longer, sitting on the porch steps with the shotgun across his knees. Ava remained near the door, the lantern behind her casting a soft line of light across the yard. At first light, they didn't speak about what had happened. Luke poured coffee into 2 cups, set one near her without a word. Ava wrapped her hands around it. Let the warmth sink in. Then she set it down, untouched. "We go today," she said. Luke nodded once. By mid-morning, Grayson Ford was already alive. Wagons lined the main road. Dust kicked up under hooves and boots. The smell of feed, leather, and coffee drifted from the general store porch where men gathered with tin cups in hand. At the center of it all stood Earl Whitaker. He worked from a table set outside his office, ledger open, coins stacked in neat rows. Men stepped forward one by one, took their pay, and moved on without looking up too long. Control didn't need to be loud. It sat in the way people stood, the way they waited their turn. A hush moved through the crowd before anyone saw why. Ava walked into the square. Luke followed half a step behind, not leading, not pushing forward. Just there. Heads turned, voices dropped. Someone muttered under their breath. A wagon wheel slowed as it passed, then stopped altogether. Whitaker didn't look up right away. He finished counting a stack of coins, slid them across the table, and only then raised his eyes. "Well now," he said. "Looks like a mistake's come back to town." Ava didn't answer him. She stepped forward, set the strip of cloth on the table beside his ledger. It didn't look like much, just a piece of worn fabric. But it didn't belong there. Whitaker glanced at it, just once, then back at her. "That's supposed to mean something?" he asked. Ava turned, not to him, but to the people gathered around. "It came from your shed," she said. "Not my hands." Silence. Not the same silence as before. This one waited. From the edge of the crowd, Martha Bell stepped forward, slow at first, then steady. "I saw a man come out of that shed," she said, "late, carrying weight he didn't want seen." Whitaker's jaw tightened. "You best be careful what you think you saw," he said. Martha didn't stop. Next came Noah Pike. He wiped his hands on his apron, eyes fixed on the ground until he reached the table. "I fixed a strap that night," he said. "Cut clean, oil all over it. Same kind that's on that cloth." A murmur spread, low, uneven. Whitaker's hand moved to close the ledger. "Enough," he said, but the crowd didn't move back. Clara Jennings stepped forward last. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. "The numbers don't match," she said. "Wages been changed, written over. That money didn't go where it was meant to." Whitaker's chair scraped back. "That's a lie," he snapped. No one flinched this time. Sheriff Grant Holloway stood near the edge of the square. His hand hovered near his belt, same as it had the day before. He looked at Whitaker, then at the cloth, then at the people who had stepped forward, one by one. The weight shifted. Whitaker saw it. He straightened, voice rising now. "You all think you can stand there and undo what's been said?" he demanded. "This town runs because I keep it that way." No one answered. Not right away. Then someone in the back spoke. Quiet, but clear. "Maybe it don't have to." Another voice followed. Then another. Words overlapped. Not loud. Just enough. Truth didn't rush in. It gathered. Whitaker's eyes moved fast now, searching for the old fear, the lowered gazes, the silence that had always worked in his favor. He didn't find it. Sheriff Holloway stepped forward, slow, deliberate. He stopped at the table, looked at Ava, then at Whitaker. "Step away," he said. Whitaker laughed once, short. "You think you're going to put hands on me?" The sheriff didn't answer. He just reached out and closed the ledger. The sound echoed louder than it should have. 2 deputies shifted behind him. Not Hatcher. The other 2. They stepped closer. Whitaker didn't move. For a moment, it looked like he might argue. Then his shoulders dropped just a fraction. Enough. The tension broke. Not all at once, but enough. Around them, people began talking. Not whispering anymore. Saying things they had kept to themselves too long. Names, numbers, stories. The square filled with it. Ava stood still through it all. She didn't smile. Didn't look at Whitaker again. Luke stepped beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Not holding her. Not leading her away. Just there. By late afternoon, the cage was brought down from the road. 2 men carried it between them, the iron scraping against the ground when they set it down near the blacksmith's forge. No one cheered. The fire took it slow. Metal glowed, then bent, then gave. Ava watched from a distance. She didn't step closer. Luke stood beside her. Neither spoke. That night, back at Stone Creek, the wind picked up again. Luke set a lantern on the porch rail, lit it with a match that flared bright, then settled into a steady glow. Ava stood beside him. The light held. Not strong, not sharp, just enough. He glanced at her once. She met his eyes, then looked out over the dark stretch of land beyond the fence. For the first time since the road, there was no weight pulling her back, no sign above her, no bars, just the open night. Luke rested his hand on the rail, not reaching for hers. She didn't move away, and in that quiet, with the lantern burning between them, something steadier than words took hold. Not rescue, not debt, just 2 people standing where they chose to stand, and neither of them standing alone. If you were there that night, with the wind moving across the dry hills and that small lantern holding back the dark, you might have wondered what you would have done. Would you have ridden past the cage like the others? Would you have kept your head down, told yourself it wasn't your place? Or would you have stayed? Because sometimes it isn't strength that changes a life. It's a quiet choice, a step forward when it would be easier to turn away. A hand held out, without asking for anything back. Ava didn't ask to be saved, and Luke didn't try to become a hero. What they found was something steadier than that. The kind of love that doesn't rush in loud, but stays. The kind that gives a person room to stand back up on their own feet. Maybe that's what we all need, at some point. Not someone to carry us, but someone who won't leave when things get hard. If this story stayed with you, tell me what moment you felt the most. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, stories about quiet courage, second chances, and the kind of love that heals, there's always another one waiting just down the road.